So welcome to Canva 101, everybody. This is the last session in our series of 5 sessions on digital engagement and design. And we're going to be talking about how to create basic social media graphics or graphics for other platforms as well. And for those of you who are interested in graphics, I know we have a lot of people across the org already using Canva. If you can just give me a quick raise of hands, how many of you already have Canva accounts and have been using it? Seeing a lot of hands go up. That's great. All right. And I'm assuming most of you are probably using it. You can just type into the chat if you want. I'm assuming many of you are using it to create graphics for social media. The one thing that I really like about Canva is not only is there the web interface where you can log in and create some really great stuff on the web, but you can also download the app on your mobile device and then have really easy access to some templates and just create like graphics on the go that you can then download to your camera roll and share to social media or just share directly to social media from the Canva platform. Now, Peggy asked, is Canva provided by Ohio State? No, it is not. So this is not an OSU enterprise tool. And I wanted to mention that here because I think in the past we've had some counties who are actually paying for Canva Pro. And I wanted to show some of the basic differences between the different levels of Canva. What we're going to be talking about primarily today is the free account. So you can sign up for a free account at canva.com. And I'm going to go ahead and type that into the chat. It's different than Canvas, which is, of course, our LMS, our learning management system. So this is canva.com. If you don't already have an account, you can go there and sign up for a free account. It'll walk you through the steps for how to make sure you activate your account. We'll talk a little bit about some of the capabilities that you have in creating a Canva account, like what brand assets you can upload. Really, it's just colors that you can choose. You don't have a ton of options there. I think we've had some folks in the past who have been paying the monthly fee for a pro account, which gives you a lot of additional options. But I will tell you moving forward, I don't believe these are being approved by IT/OCIO because I don't think Canva has gone through a security assessment or an accessibility assessment. So if you're trying to use this as a tool to like use the robust team functionality and you're paying for it, I don't know that you're going to continue to be approved to like use OSU monies to pay for these. People who have been paying for it, you may have additional information there. Canva also has an enterprise level, which they rolled this out, I think, sometime last year. It is like my dream that one day we would be able to afford to do Canva Enterprise because then we would have like the template functionality. We would be able to upload all of our brand assets and share between teams, but we don't have that. So right now we're just going to be kind of focusing on the free. So you can scroll down and see all of the different capabilities that the free accounts offer. There are some things that are missing here, like you cannot upload logos, you cannot upload your fonts. So let's just jump in. If you're interested in seeing like the different level capabilities, I'm going to go ahead and type this into the chat as well, just so you can view that if needed. But we're going to focus on Canva. So once you log in, this is what the interface looks like. One of the things I love most about Canva is they have all different types of sizes for like templates that you would use for different social media platforms or things like posters and flyers and email headers, which is really great because then you don't have to worry about messing around with like custom dimensions. You can create custom dimensions and we'll kind of get into how to do some of that stuff, but I wanted to show you the basic interface here. So the left-hand menu is how you'll navigate throughout Canva. Notice how the big blue button is create a design. And if you click that, you can type in anything to this search bar over here on the left. So if I wanted to do like a Facebook post, I would type in Facebook. And I have a couple different options here. It will also show you the dimensions of each of those different templates. So if I wanted to do just a Facebook post, it's showing me this is 940 by 788 pixels. And that is the ideal ratio, the ideal size for a Facebook post. And you could type in like an email header and it's going to pop up here with anything that has to do with email. So that's a really great functionality. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but let's just go back to our home page here. If you click all designs, this is basically your portfolio of any designs that you've created. Everything automatically saves in Canva. So unlike a Word document or a PowerPoint document, you don't have to make a point to always save your progress. These are some designs that I just clicked on just to see what they looked like, and they automatically saved to my portfolio of all my designs. If you need to delete something, so I'm not actually using this, I would hover over it and then navigate to the ... that shows up, and then hit move to trash, and then it would delete. So that's easy. You can also go to templates. It's going to show you all the different templates that are available, and there are, I was just going to say there are hundreds. There's over 50,000, it says right here. This is another searchable menu bar. So if you want to do like an Instagram post, start to type in Instagram, and it's going to pop up a little drop-down menu of all these different Instagram posts. Let's say you want to do a coronavirus Instagram post. It's going to show you some of the templates and designs that already exist. So you can pull from that. When we get to Cassie's portion, she will show us how to brand something. So how to create a post that is branded. Most of these template-based posts that are already created, you can go in and you can change the colors, you can change the font, and you can add our branding elements like the CFAES tag and the logo to ensure that it is properly branded. And that's a pretty easy thing to do. You also have photos that you can upload over here. And this tells me that it's loading, but it's taking a while. There are a ton of photo assets that exist within the Canva platform. Many of them are free, some of them are not. So when we get to the actual like create a graphic portion of this session, we'll show you how to ensure that you're only pulling free graphics. Chances are you're going to find some stuff that you really love that you have to pay for. And in order to download that graphic, you will have to pay for any element that you're using that is a fee-based element. They charge $1 for each of those elements that you want to use that are fee-based. You can also upload all of your own content to the Canva platform. And on the free account, you have a certain limitation. I can't remember if it's 1 gig or like 5 gigs worth of space. So you can go and find photos or other elements on stock image sites. Like I love Raw Pixel is my favorite. I can find any like photo that I want to use on Raw Pixel, download it on my computer, and then upload it into Canva to use. So you are not limited to just using what's available here. But I like this because if you find stuff that you really like and that will work for your graphic, you don't have to go outside the Canva platform to create a really beautiful design. We're not going to talk about the print stuff so much. The print stuff is really like creating posters, things like that. So you can use Canva, but we're going to kind of gear our conversation primarily for like social media graphics and things that are going to live online. But you can create stuff that doesn't have to live online too. Let's go down to brand kit. So you may have done this before in your Canva account for those of you who have been using it. Notice how it says you have the option to upload brand logos. You can upload font files. So if you have like the Proxima Nova and Capita font files, you can upload those. This only works though if you have the Pro account, the upgraded account. So it will not let you add your logos unless you have that upgraded account. So that's good to keep in mind. What you can create is a very simple like 3-color color palette for yourself. So you don't always have to type in that scarlet hex code or that gray hex code. You can only add 3 colors. It looks like if I try to add any more than that, it tells me go ahead and upgrade your account. So that's pretty much the only functionality that you have for your brand assets unless you upgrade. But it is a good idea to go in there and at least add some of those brand colors that you're going to be using a lot, like our scarlet and like the gray. The other thing that I will mention here is you have the option of creating a team. Team functionality is way more robust if you upgrade to the Pro version. With the non-Pro version, the free account, the team functionality is nice, but I've run into the situation in the past where I've invited people as a team member so that they could view a certain graphic of mine. And it's important to remember that you can't have templates on the free account. So if you create a graphic and you want to share that graphic out as a template to a team of people, if you just share that out and those people try to edit that post, they're actually going to edit the original post. So it doesn't function like a template where they can just grab that file, make their own, and then save it to their account. What they're actually doing is you're giving them access to the original post. And if they edit that without copying it or duplicating it first, then you will not keep the original post. So that's important to remember. One of the things that you can do though, like let's say I create something and I really like it and I want to maintain this like as a template, even though it's not really a template, you would hover over that ... when you're in all your designs, and then you can make a copy of it. So then you can go to the secondary copy, do whatever you want, and you've still maintained your original post here in your portfolio of designs. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So I'm going to just show you really quickly what the interface looks like when we go to create something. And I'm going to do just a Facebook post before I hand this over to Cassie, and she'll show us actually how to like create this. I just kind of wanted to show you what the actual design interface looks like. So once you choose your template, basically the ratio of what you're going to do, right now it's completely blank. This is your menu along the left-hand side here that basically allows you to add different elements to that graphic. So right now it's a completely blank canvas. I could choose any one of these and just say, oh, here's my canvas that I'm going to create. You do have some options here for changing colors, and I will let Cassie kind of cover the design element, so I won't get too heavy into that. Keyboard shortcuts also work in Canva, which is a really nice feature. I just hit the Command Z on my keyboard and it undid that action. So that's really nice to keep in mind. You can do some copy and pasting and things like that. The other tab down here is photos. So this is where you would search for, let's say we're going to do a post about something to do with agriculture. I could type in farm. There's a lot of really great options here that you can choose from. Anything that has a little $ in the lower right-hand corner, and that might be a little bit difficult to see, anything that has that $ means that it is not a free graphic. So if you pull that into your design, notice how it has the little stitch pattern and it says Canva on it. I have seen this, unfortunately, I've seen some of our extension offices and others like in other states. I've seen them like download graphics that they haven't paid for, and it maintains that Canva watermark on it, which is like a surefire way to tell the world, I stole this without paying for it. Please don't do that, because we all know that you didn't pay for it. That watermark will go away once you pay for it. Notice how...
I got me on a mute and no video.
Notice how if you try to download this,
Right.
It's basically going to tell you pay and download. So it's not going to let you download it until you pay for it. And right now it says it's $1. If I try to add another graphic in here, this giant pig, and try to download it, now it's going to say it's $2 because I've used an additional fee-based element. So each one is $1. There are some too that are only for premium accounts. So at least it used to be, maybe this has changed, and it was depicted by like a little crown in the lower right-hand corner of the photo instead of a $. I'm not seeing any of those pop up right now, but just keep in mind that you might run into that as well. The other option over here is elements. So this is things like graphics, icons, shapes. You can add stickers. There are some animated stuff that you can add to. You can even, Canva now has a whole template library that is video based, and you can actually download those things as a video. So it's basically like a social media post, but some element of it is animated. And that's a really good option because we know that videos are highly engaging. There's text here, so this is where you would add text boxes. Of course, we do want to maintain the brand, so you would have to use brand standards. Proxima Nova and Capita are not by default in here, but we do have, it's not Arial, it's Arial. It's spelled a little bit different, but it's basically Arial. So that would be our default font for that. You can add music. So again, this would be if you're going to add something that's more video based, there's music. You can add videos in here. Many of these are free. So of course we're going to choose the cat. You would want to make sure that this is downloaded then as an MP4 when you go to downloads. If you're not downloading it as a video, then it's not going to show up as a video. It's going to show up as a static image. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like if you download a video as a static image. You can do backgrounds. Again, you're going to want to try to maintain the brand standard. So some of this stuff is not going to maintain the brand standard. Work with the brand team. Like if you create something that you're like, I really want to be able to use this background, but it doesn't follow like our brand colors exactly, work with the brand team on stuff like that to see what they say. And then the big important button down here, this last one that says uploads. And the uploads is where you're going to upload any of your brand elements. So notice how I have a couple things in here, including some logo files, the CFAES tag. I have a white Buckeye leaf here, which would work well if it was on a dark background. You can upload the Buckeye leaves, the Buckeye nuts, the logos, the tags, anything that you think you might use. This is also where you would go to upload, like let's say you found an image that you really want to use on a third-party platform, or maybe you took a photograph that you want to use, you would upload it here. You can also upload video content, which I've never tried that before. And you would just click this big blue button, which would then open up a box to search on your computer where you would want to pull those images from. And then you upload it on here, and now you can pull that in. So if I was creating something for an APSDP, there's the logo there, and it's super simple. Again, I'm gonna let Cassie kind of take it over from here to talk about the actual like usage and how to create a graphic, whether from scratch or a template. I'll kind of be here to answer questions as we go through. But if Cassie, if you're ready to take it away, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure, I'll try, right? Okay. All right, so the first thing, kind of following up on what Danae talked about, on that branding website, and I will share my screen. Oh, can somebody give me screen share capabilities, Danae? I'm going to share a link. The brand website does have social media guidelines. Perfect. So the brand website has social media guidelines that you can look at and become familiar with. I'm sure everybody who, if any of you manage a social media page, should have been contacted in the last year asking that you make the name a certain way and that you make the Facebook profile a certain way and all that kind of stuff. Social media post images actually do not require brand approval. Note, I'm going to put emphasis on the word require. So they don't require brand approval, but I encourage you, and I don't think the branding team is going to be upset if you check in with them and just make sure that something graphically looks good and meets the readability and legibility when we talk about ADA accessibility and all that kind of stuff, that it meets those guidelines. So it is not required. And because it's not required, sometimes we see some things out there that are that make, at least for a designer's standpoint, make me kind of shiver a little bit, because they maybe aren't the greatest way to put things together, just like the watermark on the image like Danae referred to. So I'm also, as your colleague, always willing to look over anything. So if you just want to send it to me and tell me to look it over, I'm happy to do that. So again, the tag and logo, so where we talked yesterday about the bug and the bar, the logo, those aren't required to be on social media posts. Again, it's a good idea when we talk about repetition and consistency. I think the reason that they don't require them is because sometimes social media posts are actually just photos. And so for us to all have to take the time to put the logo and the bug on every single photo is not ideal. But if it is something that you're creating in Canva, and it's going to be more of an actual, let's see if I can find here what I designed. It's going to be something more like this than just a photograph that you would normally share on Facebook or something. Then I would advise that it does somewhat fall within the brand standards and meet all those things that we've talked about. So that said, I have created this. I threw it together very quickly. I've been back to back Zooms today, so forgive me. The only thing that really came to mind was the sesquicentennial. So for whatever reason, I was like, I'm just going to create a graphic based around that. So I am going to walk everybody through how I created this graphic relatively quickly in Canva. So the first thing is, if you have Canva open, you should probably have a window like this if you've already logged in and started an account. And when you hit the create a design button on the left-hand side, you have the option to create custom dimensions for a document. If you already know you need, like if somebody's contacted you and said they need a sign or a banner and these are the dimensions, or even commonly like advertisements that we put in Ohio Country Journal for, our pesticide trainings or anything like that. They may provide you dimensions where you need to design within those dimensions. So if they did not, Canva actually has some preset things that meet some of our dimensions. And so today we're just going to do a Facebook post. So you're going to click on a Facebook post and it's going to bring up a blank canvas for you to work with. And then we're going to get started with on my sample, I'll have to try to recall what it looked like. I took a picture of it on my phone too. The first thing is it had a red background. And so for us, that is, there's two different things in Canva. There's elements, and then there's also background. Background is going to be something that covers the whole canvas. So if you know you want that whole entire canvas background to be purple, then you would hit background and it would automatically make that purple. That's not what I want. So you can either hit Control Z to undo, just like any other application, or they have the little undo, redo arrows up here at the top. I only want my red background on the top half of my image. And so I'm going to actually add a square. This is going to be for you guys down in shapes, and it's just going to be a basic square. When you click it, it adds it to your canvas, or you can drag drop if that's something that you're more familiar with. And it automatically defaults it to a color. So we're gonna change the color here in a minute. But right now, I'm just gonna actually resize this and kind of put it on the top, you know, I don't know, what, 80% of my design, and leave a little white margin at the bottom. And so then for color, we're gonna have to kind of jump back to that link that I talked about yesterday, which had the color palette. And today, as compared to yesterday, where we were doing things that were print design, we're working in web design. So our color codes and all the acronyms that I gave you yesterday are actually going to be different today. They're going to change. So here, up here in the left-hand corner of your canvas is a square where you can change the color. I want it to be the Ohio State red, the Ohio State scarlet. And so I'm going to go find the hex code. This is a web color code. And the hex code for scarlet red is BB0000. So I'm going to go back here, and you can actually just type into the search bar BB0000, and it will pull up that red. The other thing you can do is hit new color, and you can type it in there, BB0000, and it will go to that red. So now I have that matches that brand red. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my footer put in here. And so that is going to require us, if you happen to be on my call yesterday, when we go into CFAS Brands website, which I will copy and link here in the chat, we're going to hit Logo Basics. And on that logos page, we're going to be able to download those logo resources. So this is going to take us to the Buckeye box that we were in yesterday. But today, we're not going to look at CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, black for print. We're going to look at RGB. So web and computer screens use red, green, blue as their color acronym, as opposed to cyan, magenta, yellow, black, because it has to do with the backlighting in a computer as to how they do color. And so we're going to click on RGB because we're doing web design. And we're actually going to choose PNG today. So PNG file is an image file. Canva actually will not put EPS files in. They don't read those as image files. So if you try to use the logo that we downloaded yesterday, it won't work because you have to have a web, I guess, compatible image file. So we're going to do PNG horizontal. And then same thing as yesterday, we're going to look for that 2-color horizontal. So it's going to be the scarlet and gray version. You're going to hit that, and it's going to download. Give you guys just a second. And then in Canva, on the far left-hand side is your toolbox, which was similar to our toolbox that we used yesterday. And you're going to hit Uploads. Upload an image or video. Go where you downloaded that. Find the file. And then it should put it in your image library here that Danae actually showed you on her computer as well, where she had the Buckeye leaf and stuff. So you are just going to drag and drop that where you want it. You'll notice when you drag and drop, you can actually place it in a box so that it will fill, like kind of like the frames that we talked about yesterday in InDesign. I don't want it to fill the box, so I'm just going to drop it. That way I can resize it. Canva keeps everything dimensional, so you don't have to worry about holding shift. Actually, in Canva, if you hold shift, it crops the image. So for designers, this is actually the opposite of InDesign. InDesign, you want to hold shift to keep it proportional. Canva, you don't want to hold shift because it will crop out some of your image. But that is a quick way to crop images in Canva. So I'm going to adjust it down to size here so that it fits in here. And the rule of thumb with the logo is that the space to the top, left, and bottom of the logo, you want to be the width of the block O, at least, the width. So I want to be able to put a block O here. I want to be able to turn a block O on its side and put it here. And I want to be able to turn a block O here and put it on its side here. That's kind of how you size that logo in that space. Yes, Danae, I agree, downloading them. I have a folder of just brand resources. So now I got that logo in there. The other thing we're going to do for that footer is we always want to make sure that we can identify what county that image was designed in. And honestly, you know, it's one of those things where we all don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so we, you know, create things and we share them with everyone. But one way to ensure that you are getting credit for everything that you created is to make sure that it has your county on it. That way people know where it came from. So I'm going to go ahead. I am going to add text and then add a subhead. I'm going to type my county name in here and highlight it. And this is where we're going to type Arial, and it's actually called Arial. It's very similar to Arial font. So this is what we're going to use here if you don't have the Proxima Nova and Capita because you don't have a pro account. I'm going to bold it. So up here across the top is all those settings, your font setting, your size, your color, bold, italic, underline, your alignment. You can do upper lowercase here, bullets, and then we're going to talk here in a little bit about spacing and line spacing there. And I'm actually going to make this smaller. I'm going to align it to the right. I want to make it red. Now, the cool thing about Canva is it saves those colors that I've already used in my document. So that red is already there. So I can just quickly click on that red and make it match. And then remember, we've talked a lot about alignment, right? And so we want to make sure that these equal. And what I'm going to do is try to line up. Yep. Right there, the top of my text box with the top of the logo so that it kind of draws an invisible line. And Canva has those built-in guidelines. So you guys should have seen that where it's kind of telling me like, oh, I'm getting close there and getting those lined up. So they kind of do that just like InDesign does, which is nice. We can't drag guidelines out, but we can at least use those to help us place things. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is I've decided I wanna do happy birthday. And I want to try to use one of the elements that Canva has already. So I don't want to be fancy. I want to use one of these things that they already have. So we're going to go into text. And somewhere in there, you guys should be able to scroll down. It's a default right now setting is one that says happy 30th birthday with white text. And if you can't find it, you might want to search birthday. Yeah, if you search birthday, it might be the first one that comes up. It's got these blocky white letters. So I'm just going to drag and drop that because I think, yeah, I like that. And it looks kind of like the sesquicentennial logo. Sesquicentennial, I don't know how to say that word very well. All right, so the first thing a lot of people struggle with in Canva is they do this and then they're like, well, I don't necessarily want this text down here. And in my case, I didn't necessarily want this down here. I just wanted this headline. So these, when you start to see a solid line with a dotted line, that means it's grouped. These elements are grouped together and you have to ungroup them before you can delete one of them. So up here at the top, we're gonna hit ungroup and that's gonna make it so that I can actually delete this subhead because I don't want it, I just want the top. And then you can go in and type and you can edit this type. So I'm gonna change 30 to 150. And I added a little exclamation point at the end of mine, which bumps it down. So you have to make this box just a little bit bigger. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I want to create some sort of division or that visual hierarchy between the words on the top half and then where I'm going to put the details in the bottom. And so just for fun, I'm going to use this dotted line just because polka dots makes me think of birthdays, I guess, kind of like confetti or something. So in Elements, you scroll down to Lines, and it's the first one. If you click See All, it'll give you all the different lines, and it'll also go down and it'll start giving you paid ones as well. So just make sure that anything you want to use, unless you want to spend money on it, which I never do. If I'm doing things in Canva, I want it to be free. That's why I'm using Canva, to make it free and easy. So I'm gonna drag this dotted line out so that I actually want the first dot to line up with the text here, and I want the last dot to line up with the text over there. You could also have the dot line up with the U and your edu on your website as well if you wanted to, just so that it lines up with something. Remember, nothing in design is arbitrary. And then I want to change this color to gray. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. All right. Yeah, ungroup was good. When things are grouped, you'll see ungroup. It'll automatically show up here at the top in your top toolbar. Should I slow down? Am I going too fast? Sorry.
What do you guys think? Anybody feeling like it's too fast?
No, they're all quiet.
It's like Adrienne has her hand up.
Okay.
Adrienne, did you? Oh,
Looks like she just took it down.
I'll give everyone a minute.
I will say, I think it's bad. Sometimes, like when I've taught Canva classes in the past, it seems like it's going really fast. One of the best ways to learn it, trust me, you can't break things here because it's not like a Zoom meeting where you have like other people who might be waiting to call. Create that free Canva account, go in there and just start playing around. It's the best way to learn how to use it. So you can also go back to this recording, of course, and kind of walk through Cassie's lesson and kind of create as you're watching that.
Yeah, and did you talk about their design school at all, Danae, when you were going through
I did not
there?
mention that, no.
Okay, all right, I'll touch on that before I finish up here. It's hard for me. I've never taught virtual design classes. Normally, so when I've taught design classes, which I have done for the university, I'm in a computer lab and I can actually see everybody's screens and where they're at. And so I have an ability to adjust how I'm teaching according to what I'm seeing in the room, or, you know, so it's very difficult. I can't read my audience, and I'm used to being able to read my audience. So, okay, so we've got our dotted line, and I want to make it a light gray color. So I'm going to go back again to our extended palette here, and I'm going to choose 40% tint. The hex codes are funny sometimes. I don't know why they make me laugh, but the hex code is C2, C2, C2. So again, I'm just going to type C2, C2, C2. And I've got the gray that is brand, meets brand standards. So, right. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add some details down here at the bottom. We're just gonna do this real quickly. I'm just gonna add a subhead just so you guys can get a feel for line spacing. So this can say whatever you want it to say. Nobody's gonna see this fancy postcard or Facebook graphic. So I'm just gonna say, oops. Join us to celebrate 150 years of being land grant. Oh, fierce. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm actually going to make it smaller so that it all fits on one line. So in this case, 18 size font is going to work for me. And I'm going to italicize it. And the reason I'm going to italicize it is because it's not, it's something that I want them to read the subject first, and then I want them to read the details. And it's not necessarily super important that they read this part. And italics actually de-emphasize letters in our minds. And the other thing is I kind of want to stretch it out. I feel like when I italicize it, it looks very cramped in there. The letters do. And if you want to change this to Arial, you can. So even there, the letters look very cramped. And so up here, if you feel like your letters are cramped or you need to extend it, so in this case, maybe I want to extend it so that the J aligns with the first dot in my dotted line and the exclamation point at the end aligns with the last dot. Right here in spacing is where you can adjust the spacing between your letters. So if you want to make something just a little bit more spaced there, that's where you can adjust that. Also in the spacing is line height. So that's where you're going to adjust the spacing between two lines. So letters, spacing between letters, line height, spacing between lines. I'm going to put a return under this, and then I'm going to start putting my details. So Saturday, I wish it was tomorrow, just because I'd like to get out of my house. June 13th, 3:00 p.m. I'm just putting straight slashes in between. Straight slashes are a great way to separate details from things very quickly, very easily. All right, I do want to put an emphasis on these details. So I'm going to highlight just these words, which you can do in a box. I'm going to un-italicize those, and I'm going to bold them. And I might even make them just a little bit bigger so they stand out. Now, when I did that, you'll see that, again, we're back to being cramped. It's almost like that one line is on top of that other line. So I'm going to highlight all of this, which, by the way, a shortcut, I think it'll work in here. A shortcut to highlight all is Control-A. So if you're having a hard time getting it all highlighted, just click in the box and type Control-A and it'll highlight it all. And then I'm going to adjust my line height. So that's automatically going to bump that line down without having to put a return in there. Sometimes a return is too much space, which is why we use line height instead of returns. I'm going to bump this down just a little bit. Okay. All right. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to add, because I just feel like this is kind of plain. It's a lot of text and it's just plain. And we have this, you'll see over here, we have this kind of red space that we could add something. I'm going to add a birthday cake. So I'm going to go over here to Elements and I'm going to type cake. And I'm going to pick that first cake that pops up. It's a vectorized cake. And I'm going to drag and drop that in there. I'm going to adjust the size on it a little bit so it fits in that space. And I'm actually going to run it off the page. It's going to interfere with the text, but if I run it off the page, our minds say that it is not as important as the text. I know this is crazy psychology behind all this. In this case, I don't want it to be teal. Actually, it's funny though, because that teal is one of, or close to one of those, one of those brand colors. But for me, I don't want it to be the teal. I'm actually going to make it black. And the reason I'm going to make it black is because after I make it black, I am going to go up here to this box that has a bunch of dots and the dots slowly fade. It looks like an ombre. That's your transparency setting. And I'm going to set the transparency down on this cake all the way down to like 10 or 15 so that it's there, but it's not. So our minds recognize it, but it's not something that that it calls attention or is distracting to the eye because it's in the background. On my design principles on Tuesday, we talked about how it's not a good idea to put text over images. This isn't an image. This is a graphic element. So this is different than text over a photo because this is an actual graphic element. So it plays into the graphic design part of the piece. One last thing you'll notice, if you look, you'll be able to see that this is actually in front of our text. So where it falls in front of our dotted line in our text, it's because it needs to be moved to the back. And in Canva, it does allow you to move positions of things. But keep in mind, if I go to this and I send this to the back, I have that box and it goes behind the red box. So I'm going to undo that. That's not what I want. What I'm going to do is select this and the red box, group them because they're actually they're all part of my background, which don't freak out, made your text go away. And then I'm going to send those to the back. So now my background is one piece and it's in the back. And then I have everything else in the front. So that's kind of in a nutshell how you could create something that looks nice, that if you were going to have a birthday party or whatever it may be, even these are fun if you're going to announce like somebody's retiring on Facebook. Anything like that is a good use of Canva that you're not going to print it. It's more of a short-term thing, but you want to make a cute announcement. Somebody won an award or they're in the Hall of Fame, all those kinds of things. I have here, I can show you some of what I've used Canva for. Now keep in mind, I don't use it a whole lot because I do have all the design programs. I'm more familiar in those, but I've used it for some quick things. Just the other day, I made this graphic because I about was tired of explaining to people the difference between 4-H enrollment and junior fair entry. So I kind of threw this in and put it up on our Facebook page so that people could start to recommend or see the difference. I put it in our blog too. And then I've done some stuff down here like join 4-H with some of the 4-H colors. We announced a youth horse clinic. Just some fun things. Mostly when I use Canva, I get on here, use templates. Here's some branded stuff. This was a header to our newsletter, things like that. So Canva is a quick, easy way to grab something and you don't have to be super design intuitive to do it because it kind of helps you. Back on your homepage on the left-hand side, Canva does have a design school. It's really cool. It's like modules. You can actually follow your course progress through it. And then they have all kinds of sessions depending on what you're going to use it for, including like Canva for education. So if you know you're going to use it for classroom work, this will help you with how you could use it there, designing, presenting, branding. So these are good things that, as I know we're all zoomed out at this point, but if you find yourself, if this ends up lasting longer than, I think it's going to be quite a while, you might find that this is a good way to just kill some time to get on here. And because what I found when I've used some of these courses is it's not just helpful for Canva, it's helpful for some of the things we talked about, like graphic design basics and principles and psychology behind how people think and branding and all that kind of stuff. So also, as an educator, I find that teaching Canva is really great for any entrepreneurs that I work with. So if you happen to be in community development or A&R, you're working with like farmers, I use it a lot for some of my 4-Hers who want to start breeding programs for their livestock and they want to like start putting flyers out for sales or things like that. This is a great tool for those individuals where they're not necessarily as skilled to use the design programs. But if you can even start learning Canva enough to teach our community people about Canva, it is a great resource for them. So, are there any questions?
I did want to show one last thing. So as you guys have questions, please put those in the chat or just unmute yourself. I was going to share my screen here and just show you how to create a really quick video because you can do some like animated stuff in Canva too for social media, which is really, really easy. So if you are back on your home page here, and everybody should see that. So this is just like your Canva homepage. There's an option here under categories for video. And if you just click that, there's, again, a lot of different templates here. You can edit some of these templates to make sure that they are branded. So we're going to do something, and you can hover over any of these, and it'll show you exactly what that animation is. Like here's a really cool one of like the earth spinning, which could just be, I don't know, really cool for some reason or another. But even if you just want to do something like super, super simple, right? It's not like an actual video. There's not like, it's not, like a live feed of a video. It's just this simple little animation, which can kind of add a little bit of flair to a social media post. So everything that Cassie just showed about like creating just sort of a static graphic remains true here. So if we wanted to change the background here, you can just go to background and you have a ton of different options. So you can play with some of those. Again, we do want to try to keep branding in mind, but sometimes you just want like a photo here. So let's say we do like a cloud photo, and then we want to do something about, like you're going to post something about mindfulness. How do you spell mindfulness? You can move this all around. I don't know what I just did there, but you can move these graphics all around. So make sure that it, you know, it's kind of where you want it to be. And then in order to add some of those branded elements, again, Cassie kind of mentioned that not every single social media post per our guidelines needs to be branded. So some things are just quick, easy, like you're posting a photo, you're posting some text, those types of things don't have to be branded. But if you're gonna use Canva to post something like like a program announcement, that's more kind of like a flyer. So this would kind of be like almost like a video flyer, right? Like a digital flyer that you're posting about an upcoming program. You're going to want stuff like that to be branded appropriately. Notice how this template that I'm using has this little sort of white frame in it. So from a design perspective, we could take that tag all the way up to the top where it normally is, but in this case, I'm just going to take it to that frame. I would probably not use this gray logo because it's a little bit light, or I'm sorry, it's a little bit just difficult to see. But you would resize this, you know, you would put all your details here. I'm not going to go into that full scope, but you'd make sure that again, what we're hearing from the brand team, or what I have heard from the brand team in the past, is that your tag should be half the width of your logo. Notice how Canva does a really nice job of kind of creating some of those alignments here. And I'd probably align that block O to that. You may also want to keep that block O, a block O's width away from that white frame. So just some design things. Again, I probably wouldn't use that gray logo on this background, but it's there. Move everything you want. Once you get all the details here, so if you have like an upcoming program or like maybe a Facebook Live session, you could like put a little announcement together that says like, hey, we're going live on Facebook at this time, join us. When you go to hit the download button, you're going to have a couple different options. Video is an option. So you would want to make sure that you're downloading this as a video, and it's going to download as an MP4 to your computer, and then you can upload it as a video to Facebook or Twitter or wherever else you're posting it. If you download like a PDF or a JPEG, it's going to download a static image, not the animated video. So just some other ways that you can use Canva to create some really like not so much interactive, but like not static content, which of course Facebook loves. So just keep some of that stuff in mind.
Danae, the one that you're sharing right now, can you do something similar to what Cassie did with the 150th birthday? Happy birthday. Can you get rid of the performed at the,
Yes.
whatever that says down there?
Yeah, so you would just, every time I select something, it makes the other thing go black. So yes, you can delete all of these individual elements. I don't know
so you
why
can
it keeps doing
ungroup.
that. Yeah, I don't think these elements are actually grouped. For whatever reason, I keep messing up that background. But yes, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. But you have to kind of go through, you have to go into like the video when you're on templates, you would go through like the video option to get access to all of those video based like graphics and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, so from here we'll open it up for questions. I did see like, how do you feel about the video versus the GIF? The GIF things I haven't actually tried. I did try earlier to see if I could make like a GIF. You can even put like, you can make a static piece of content and then you can actually put like a frame in it for a video or for a GIF. When I downloaded both of those, the video and the GIF did not work. So it downloaded as a really like problematic file. I'm assuming if you share directly to Facebook from Canva, that would probably work. But I haven't tried that, but you could. The problem is that is the problem I keep having when I remove. So when you try to remove something, it like for some reason makes it go gray. Is that what you're talking about, Tracy? I need to explore that a little bit more because I don't know what was happening there. Yeah, we'll have to explore that a little bit more. I'm not sure what was going on there. Sydney asked, will we continue these drop-in trainings? Yes, and I'm going to give it over to Debbie in just a minute to explain that, but let's get to some of these other questions. Cheryl said she asked about the tag width. Yes, thank you for that, Cheryl. Well, it'll be good to have a follow-up. Again, some of us have heard, like we've been told that the tag width should be half the size of the logo, just like as a general rule of thumb, but it'll be helpful to have a more solid answer on that. Yeah, Christina said I wouldn't post a full flyer as a social media image. We tend to see this a lot, guys, and I have to laugh about it. I see more often than I would like to admit. I see where people print like a PDF flyer like from a physical printer, and then they take a picture of that and then they post that picture on Facebook. This is just as an aside, it's not even having to do with Canva, but if you want to post like the full flyer, like the full PDF, you can export that as a JPEG and then like import or upload that directly to Facebook. One of the issues that you're going to run into there is we've talked about the color codes that you should be using for print content, which is all CMYK. Anything for web is going to be that RGB or hex. So the colors are going to be a little bit different. Cheryl, you may have a better answer here. I don't know that we have to tell everybody you have to create 2 completely different versions of every single thing that you do to accommodate that color difference. Cheryl, I don't know if you have an answer.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's a perpetual question.
Yeah. What I would recommend is, I mean, what I would do, and again, it might not double the amount of work that you have, but it does duplicate some effort, is if you have a print flyer that you know that you have to physically print and like hang up someplace, that's fine. Take some of that information, condense it for the web, only give like the pertinent information, then use Canva or InDesign or another tool to like create something that's specific for social media. That would be best practice. People like to see a full print flyer on social media just isn't best practice. But we understand that does duplicate some of that effort and that time. So it's not something that we're going to like come out and mandate that you do, but.
Well, and I think with social media, sometimes less is more. I mean, I've said before, you know, the websites hold your static content. So if you've got information posted there and you can save yourself some time by doing a fairly, you know, a quick image, as Danae said, for a social media post and direct people back to your full flyer, either with a Go link or something like that, that might help you there instead of duplicating effort.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is that a lot of people, you know, they'll post that flyer as like an image on Facebook, but that doesn't have a clickable link. So again, what we'd recommend is even creating like a condensed version of it that you post on Facebook and then just have that clickable link, whether it goes to a Qualtrics registration or Cvent or your website for more information. It doesn't have to list all the details, right? Just give the link to the website where those additional details are going to be listed. That is best practice. A couple other questions. If I want to share this with other agencies to post on their social media sites, kind of depends on what you want to do, Sarah. I mean, ideally, those other agencies would grab your original Facebook post and share it out to their clientele on Facebook. That way, all of that traffic may come back to your Facebook page and hopefully increase your followership on Facebook. That would be like the ideal situation. The alternative would be to just send them like a JPEG graphic and say, hey, can you post this on social media? But I would try to get to a point with some of the relationships that you have with other organizations in your community is where you're not necessarily sharing every single thing that other agencies post, and they're not sharing every single thing that you post, but you have that relationship where they share some of your stuff that's relevant to their audiences, you're sharing some of that stuff that's relevant to your audiences that they're posting. That's the ideal relationship that we want to get to when it comes to social media. So I hope that made sense. Yes, and Heather, that's a great point that you brought up too, is using the Go links for flyers. We see a lot of like extended, like really ugly links to things like Cvent. Nobody wants to type all that stuff in. So use go.osu.edu as a method to create those shorter links for people that are memorable and easy, and it's just much better. And then Teresa asked, so a link in Canva design post would not be clickable. It's not clickable once you export that as like a JPEG or a PDF or like a video. Nothing's gonna stay clickable. Nope.
I will say, if any of you are going to use InDesign after InDesign yesterday, and we were talking about the color conversions, InDesign, once you have a document designed, so say I designed it originally for print, InDesign will make the conversion for you to RGB when you export it to PDF. There is a setting in there, when you export to PDF, you can choose destination color settings. And if you tell it that that PDF is going to be put on the web, you can select RGB in there, or the destination will say like web RGB, and it will convert all your CMYK to RGB before it PDFs it. So sometimes it's just a matter in InDesign, I'm not talking about Canva, but in InDesign, it's just a matter of saving two different PDFs, one that is CMYK print PDF and one that is an RGB web PDF. Those are really high level complicated things. I'm glad you guys are asking, but a lot of the times, you know, we do what we can do, and that works, and that's good enough. So
So one more question from Sarah about why are some of the art elements missing on the CFAES brand site, like Brutus, the We Sustain Life badge, the Ohio. I don't have an answer for that. And I don't know if Cheryl has any additional information for where we might be able to find some of those elements, or like if and where we're allowed to use some of those elements. There's some things that are, like if you look at the OSU brand website, there's some things that like we should only be using in certain ways or on certain documents.
Cheryl had to actually hop off the call.
Oh, okay.
Or, and I saw those elements on the CFAS site earlier this week, so I'm not sure what happened to them because I'm trying to look for them right now and I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, we can try and do some investigative research and see. With that, I'm going to send a huge thank you to Cassie for your help with all these sessions this week. That wraps up our bootcamp for digital engagement and design. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording and then we'll hand it over to Debbie to talk a little bit about our sessions for next week.